A reputable leaker claims that they are aware of 5 Resident Evil games that are in development right now. Resident Evil is one of Capcom's biggest and most successful franchises. Considering this, it's really no surprise that the company makes sure that there are regularly new Resident Evil games for survival horror fans to play. A new Resident Evil game of some description has been released almost every single year since the original Resident Evil launched in 1996. In fact, there's been an unbroken streak of new Resident Evil games since 2019's Resident Evil 2 Remake, which was followed up by the Resident Evil 3 Remake in 2020, Resident Evil Village in 2021, the Resident Evil Reverse multiplayer game in 2022, and most recently, the Resident Evil 4 Remake in 2023. A new Resident Evil game has not been announced for release in 2024, and so it seems this year could break the franchise's streak. But while the jury is still out on whether a new Resident Evil game will release in 2024 or not, reputable leaker Aesthetic Gamer, aka Dusk Golem, has said that they are aware of 5 RE projects that are currently in development. One of these games is the unannounced Resident Evil 9, 2 others is Resident Evil Revelations 3 Outrage and Resident Evil 5 Remake, but it's anyone's guess as to what the other projects could be. As far as Resident Evil 9 goes, leaks have indicated that it will end the story that started with Resident Evil 7. This could mean that Resident Evil 9 is yet another first-person Resident Evil game, but that remains to be seen. Previously, Aesthetic Gamer has said that Resident Evil 9 will likely be released in 2025, so it's possible fans will learn more about the exciting project at some point in the relatively near future. The other Resident Evil projects could be anything from brand new entries in the series to remakes of existing games. There's been a great deal of fan demand for Resident Evil Code Veronica to get a remake, for example, though nothing to that effect has actually been announced by Capcom just yet. There have also been rumblings of a potential Resident Evil 5 remake at some point down the line, but again, that's just speculation. There are a handful of other main series Resident Evil games that could potentially benefit from the remake treatment. While Capcom has yet to announce a new Resident Evil game for release in 2024, the company has confirmed a re-release of the Resident Evil 4 remake. Dropping February 20th, Resident Evil 4 Gold Edition will bundle the base game along with the Separate Ways expansion and a handful of DLC items. Fans now have a reason to be hopeful and optimistic about The Evil Within 3, since former Tango Gameworks CEO and The Evil Within executive producer Shinji Mikami believes a third entry is possible. Although Mikami is no longer an employee at Tango Gameworks, the prolific developer may be open to working with the studio again to greenlight The Evil Within 3. The Evil Within is a survival horror series that takes some cues from Mikami's previous works from the Resident Evil series. Both The Evil Within and The Evil Within 2 went on to become cult classics, but Mikami decided to experiment with new ideas in other genres. In 2022, Mikami served as executive producer of Ghostwire Tokyo, lending his development expertise to help create an intriguing first-person action-adventure game set in Tokyo. After releasing the acclaimed Hi-Fi Rush game in 2023, Mikami announced his departure from Tango Gameworks. The Evil Within community and myself is hopeful for The Evil Within 3 after user Sophia Lapapu captured a screenshot of Shinji Mikami's recent Facebook post, which stated that he's open to a return to the series. Specifically, Mikami says that he would like to return to Psycho Break, which is the Japanese name for the Evil Within franchise. It's worth noting that he did not confirm The Evil Within 3, since Mikami is no longer an employee of Tango Gameworks. Although he's unable to greenlight the third entry in the series, Tango Gameworks can consult and bring him back on to help develop the game. The possibility of Mikami returning to the series someday gives fans hope for a future announcement, and many are hyped about what The Evil Within 3 could bring to the horror genre. Some fans were skeptical of the Facebook post, but Sophia Lapapu reconfirmed that it was from Shinji Mikami's official Facebook account. Others believe the success of Alan Wake 2 and Resident Evil May 4th have encouraged Mikami to make his statement since the horror genre is experiencing a resurgence. Tango Gameworks is working on a completely different project, so The Evil Within fans shouldn't be too hopeful about an announcement for The Evil Within 3 anytime soon. The studio's recent releases should show that it's capable of releasing high-quality titles outside the horror genre, and Tango Gameworks may choose to continue chasing and brainstorming ideas for new IPs. At the very least, Mikami's post is a sign that a working relationship between the producer and Tango Gameworks could help make The Evil Within 3 a reality someday. Naughty Dog has identified The Last of Us 2 leaker and found out why they leaked the footage. Neil Druckmann, director of Naughty Dog's The Last of Us Part 2, reveals details on the massive leak that almost ruined the game's release. In a recent documentary, The Last of Us Part 2 director Neil Druckmann revealed that a young fan of the franchise was responsible for notoriously leaking footage from the game, in the hope that it would expedite the sequel's release. While the massive Last of Us Part 2 leak resulted in some players forming an opinion on the game before even experiencing it, the title went on to earn praise and support upon its official launch, though the game's director was disheartened by the unplanned reveal of its story. Released in 2020, The Last of Us Part 2 smashed records, highlighting the popularity of the series and the quality of the game. However, a massive leak prior to the game's launch threatened to ruin the game's release, and Neil Druckmann has finally shared more details about the incident. During a segment in The Last of Us Part 2 documentary Grounded 2, Neil Druckmann speaks about the 2020 leaks that almost ruined the game's launch. According to Druckmann, the leaks were infuriating, and he was distraught to the extent of wanting the leaker to be severely punished. However, Druckmann found out that the leaker was a Dutch fan in their 20s who hacked into the company's servers to leak the footage in the hope that it would push the studio to release the title as quickly as possible. Druckmann chose to leave his frustrations over the leak behind and focus on the completion of the game's development. The result of Druckmann's redirected focus was a massively successful sequel that performed incredibly well, in spite of the initial fan response to the leak. Development teams often spend years creating unique stories, compelling characters, and memorable experiences, and naturally they want fans to be surprised by all that a game has to offer. When content is leaked early, fans may be spoiled on major plot points, twists, or character reveals, potentially ruining the player enjoyment and commercial success of a release. The massive Insomniac game leaks from 2023 were detrimental to the morale of developers, and the Grand Theft Auto 6 leak forced the studio to release an official trailer to an already spoiled audience. As developers continue to work on combating and prevent leaks, many fans remain supportive of their favorite studios and voice their appreciation for developers affected by unofficial content reveals. Though leaked content may occasionally help to boost fan excitement, this was far from the case with this game, and any spoilers often come at the cost of game developers being angered by leaks. The Last of Us Part 2 was initially envisioned as a Bloodborne-inspired open-world game, according to comments made by Naughty Dog developers in a recent documentary. This news follows last month's release of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, which has reinvigorated online discussion and publicity about the ambitious and controversial title. Naughty Dog took some significant creative leaps with The Last of Us 2. Aside from general polish thanks to advancements in technology and gaming conventions, the game featured a number of new mechanics, movement and combat options, and core elements of level design, generally being more open-ended than its predecessor. Still, the game is mostly seen as a direct evolution of the first game, both in terms of story and stealth-focused gameplay with a dash of survival horror. However, it would seem that this was not always meant to be the case. In the Grounded 2 Making The Last of Us Part 2 documentary, developers Anthony Newman and Amelia Schatz touch on the early plans for the game. Rather than The Last of Us 2 featuring a level-based, fairly linear design, the game was originally conceptualized as a semi-open world game that got bigger as the player explored. Additionally, it was meant to be purely melee-focused, with no firearms. Schatz and Newman both name Bloodborne as the primary, specific influence for this design approach. Ultimately, the open-world design wouldn't have worked well for the story Naughty Dog was trying to tell, as Newman explains. For fans of both The Last of Us and Bloodborne, a melding of the two franchises may seem like a dream come true. Indeed, it would have been one of the boldest decisions Naughty Dog could have made with The Last of Us 2, but it certainly could have worked. In fact, some of the DNA of this original plan may have been retained in the final product, in the form of one of the early Seattle levels, which adopts a semi-open world structure. That area is one of the most memorable parts of the game, so it would have been interesting to see how Naughty Dog would have handled an entire game with a similar style. At the same time, Newman's comments about open-world design not fitting The Last of Us 2's narrative ring true. Additionally, it would have been hard to justify the complete absence of firearms within the context of The Last of Us survival horror foundations. Still, the idea of The Last of Us Part 2 mixed with Bloodborne is certainly intriguing, so perhaps the third game in the series could revisit the concept. We also got confirmation for The Last of Us Part 3 in that documentary of making The Last of Us Part 2 Grounded 2 documentary. There are some great insights in that documentary, so definitely check out the full video, which is out on the official Naughty Dog YouTube channel. Months after Microsoft finalized its acquisition of video game company Activision Blizzard, the company is laying off 1,900 employees across its video game workforce, including Xbox. According to an internal memo first reported on by The Verge and since confirmed by Microsoft, just the latest in a string of tech layoffs that have been announced this month. The cuts work out to roughly 8% of the overall Microsoft gaming division that stands at around 22,000 employees in total. The Verge has obtained an internal memo from Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer that confirms the layoffs. Additionally, Booty announced the departures of Alan Adam, Blizzard's chief design officer, and Mike Ibarra, Blizzard Entertainment president. Ibarra officially announced his exit on social media. He leaves the developer after 4 years, having served as president for the last 2 years. Alongside the layoffs, Blizzard president Mike Ibarra has decided to leave the company. As many of you know, Mike previously spent more than 20 years at Microsoft. Now that he has seen the acquisition through as Blizzard's president, he has decided to leave the company, says Microsoft's Game Content and Studios president, Matt Booty, in an internal memo. Alan Adam, Blizzard's chief design officer, is also leaving the company. As one of Blizzard's co-founders, Alan has had a broad impact on all of Blizzard's games. His influence will be felt for years to come, both directly and indirectly, as Alan plans to continue mentoring young designers across the industry, says Booty. As reported by the San Francisco Chronicle, Microsoft's mass layoffs are affecting 162 workers located in Novato and Foster City. According to state filings, the Novato layoffs correspond to the address of Toys for Bob, the studio known for creating Skylanders and carrying forth Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, and the facility is also set to close, while in Foster City, the layoffs match the location of Activision subsidiary Sledgehammer Games. Furthermore, Sledgehammer Games is not only laying off employees but also closing its office temporarily, with workers transitioning to remote work. The recent Microsoft layoffs are going to affect 86 employees at Skylanders Toys for Bob and 76 workers at Sledgehammer Games. I'm afraid Toys for Bob might get shut down permanently, and the future of Crash and Spyro might be in danger. In the wake of a tumultuous time at Blizzard Entertainment, the company tapped former Call of Duty general manager Johanna Faries as the new president of Blizzard Entertainment. Faries is the first woman to assume the mantle of president at Blizzard, and she takes the position following the sudden resignation of former lead Mike Ibarra. On January 29, Microsoft appointed Johanna Faries to take the position of Blizzard's new president. As the former general manager of the Call of Duty franchise, Faries is the first woman to hold the position as the head of Blizzard Entertainment. Before her time at Activision Blizzard, Faries spent 12 years in the front office of the National Football League, NFL, across multiple marketing and business departments. According to an email sent to all Blizzard staff, Faries begins her duties on February 5. While Faries acknowledges the January layoffs at Microsoft in her letter, she said that Activision, Blizzard, and King are different companies with various ideas and expectations. Faries added that she will continue working with Blizzard's leadership team in the meantime. Faries originally joined Activision Blizzard back in 2018 as commissioner of Call of Duty esports. Before her new role, she served as general manager of Call of Duty. Activision Blizzard lets go of the majority of its esports division, which worked on productions like the Overwatch League and Call of Duty League. Blizzard's previously announced survival game has also been cancelled as part of these changes. Booty says Microsoft will be shifting some of the people working on it to one of several promising new projects Blizzard has in the early stages of development. Regarding layoffs, a year prior, Microsoft laid off 10,000 employees. Among the affected were staff at Bethesda Game Studios and 343 Industries. News of layoffs at Microsoft comes 3 months after Activision Blizzard officially became a part of the tech firm. Regulatory hurdles in the UK, EU, and US held up the $68.7 billion acquisition deal. Microsoft is set to report its second quarter earnings next week. During the first quarter, it reported net income of $22.3 billion, up 27% year-over-year. Layoffs come just a few months after some big Xbox leadership changes saw Sarah Bond promoted to Xbox president, leading all Xbox platform and hardware work. Booty was also promoted to president of game content and studios, which includes overseeing Bethesda, ZeniMax Studios, and Activision Blizzard. Just days after laying off 1,900 workers under the recently acquired Activision Blizzard, Microsoft has become only the second company ever to reach a $3 trillion market value. People have continued to question and even critique the continuing trend of major companies in the technology and gaming industries resorting to massive layoffs in order to cut costs. Consumers have remained highly critical of companies letting go of hundreds of employees while simultaneously boasting record profits and stock valuations. Microsoft is among the companies to receive scrutiny, particularly as it received a similar boost in corporate value just 1 year ago, which also came under similar circumstances. With many in the technology and gaming industries constantly reeling from layoffs, cancellations, and shutdowns, it is understandable that Microsoft's $3 trillion achievement has raised a number of eyebrows. Layoffs happen when mergers occur to trim the fat, but this particular one is more than that. One area hit during the recent round of layoffs at Microsoft are the departments focused on bringing physical Xbox games to retail. This rumor was followed more recently by the revelation that Walmart was removing all physical copies of Starfield from its retail stores, with a leaked memo stating that the supplier is funding this action. Best Buy is also reportedly phasing out all physical media, video games included. None of these events are encouraging for consumers who still prefer, support, or collect physical copies of games. Xbox has a very low physical game support, and the game doesn't even come with the disc. You have to download the game online, but that's not the case for PlayStation and Nintendo. We see most of the recent and upcoming Xbox games do not come with a physical edition, Hellblade 2. Physical media is doing incredibly well on PlayStation and Nintendo. PlayStation first-party games have a higher physical attach rate than digital, globally. An average of 65% physical games attach rate for the first-party PlayStation fames. Hopefully this trend continues, but it's looking like Microsoft is going all digital. Other information from the layoffs include, it's a move that comes at an interesting time for Sledgehammer Games, as it was also announced during the town hall that the studio would be the main developer for Activision's 2027 Call of Duty title. Infinity Ward will be heading Call of Duty 2026, understood to be in the Modern Warfare universe. Call of Duty 2025 is currently planned to be a semi-futuristic Black Ops 2 sequel under the codename Saturn. Sources have told that 30% of Sledgehammer Games staff have lost their jobs, and around 40% of staff, 35 people, were also let go from Toys for Bob. Following the recent round of layoffs at Microsoft, details about Blizzard's cancelled survival game Odyssey has surfaced online. Blizzard developer Johnny Cash referred to the game as fantastic and sang his praises for the work done by the game's team. According to reports by Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, Odyssey was set to play similarly to games like Minecraft and Rust with servers hosting up to 100 players. The game's engine was reportedly a particular point of conflict, with Blizzard requesting that the team use its in-house Synapse engine while members of the team wished to switch to Unreal Engine. In the report published by Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, it was stressed that Odyssey had existed, at least as a concept, since 2017. It was to be an ambitious open-world survival title that supported servers with 100-player capacities. There was a team of around 100 people working on Odyssey, but it was never enough. Recently, a melting pot of technical issues, engine-based struggles, stakeholder unease, and a release window that was being pushed ever further back brought about the end of Odyssey before it could be officially revealed. It was referenced in Bloomberg's report that a launch window of 2026 for Odyssey was seen as being overly optimistic. The unfortunate Odyssey cancellation comes as part of a major restructuring at Blizzard as a result of the recent layoffs. Reports following the layoffs have suggested that most of Blizzard's customer support division was relieved from their duties, with Microsoft planning to outsource those jobs. Several community managers were also affected by the layoffs, with some suggesting that the layoffs have left many of Blizzard's live service games without proper functioning support teams. Blizzard president Mike Ibarra would also leave the company following the layoffs. Microsoft's most recent round of layoffs come as the newest entry in an unfortunate trend within the gaming industry. Following a 2023 filled with layoffs at many of gaming's biggest companies, 2024 has begun on a similar note with developers like Embracer Group and Riot Games parting with hundreds of employees. The ongoing trend has even spread to gaming juggernaut Unity and social media platform Discord. Odyssey's cancellation comes as the most recent unfortunate side effect of the continued trend of downsizing throughout the gaming industry. Black Forest Games, a German video game developer subsidiary of THQ Nordic, which Embracer Group owns, is reportedly planning to lay off around 50% of its employees. Last December, two Danish developers owned by Embracer Group, 3D Realms and Slipgate Ironworks, announced that over half of their staff would have their roles eliminated. With that announcement, around 1,000 people were laid off by Embracer in the second half of 2023. Now, Black Forest Games is seemingly the latest developer to be affected. Black Forest Games was founded in 2012 before being acquired by THQ Nordic in 2017 and is known across the industry as the developer of the Cold War-era Alien Invasion remakes, Destroy All Humans. More recently, the company announced that it was working on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin, a darker take on the franchise inspired by Sony Santa Monica's God of War games. Now, Kotaku is reporting that Black Forest Games announced to its staff on January 24 that the developer plans to cut around 50% of its workforce, with management promising to provide more information by next week. The article went on to say that a source confirmed that most of Black Forest Games' upper echelon, including creative directors and managers, would be safe from the layoffs. According to the company's website, the developers have over 100 employees, with most having more than 20+ years of experience. Embracer Group, THQ Nordic, and Black Forest Games have yet to issue a statement regarding the layoffs. Hopefully the game doesn't get massively affected from this. In yet another blow to workers in the video game industry, Riot Games has announced that it will lay off 530 staff members, or roughly 11% of its employees. The decision follows the unfortunate trend of studio shutdowns, game cancellations, and AAA game studio layoffs that dominated the industry in 2023. Founded in 2006, Riot Games is the video game developer behind the popular titles League of Legends and Valorant. Its subsidiary, Riot Forge, has served as publisher on a number of games set in the League of Legends universe, such as Ruined King and Song of Nunu. However, this newly announced set of layoffs is set to massively reshape Riot Games and the company's future. First announced in a public letter on the official Riot Games website, CEO Dylan Jadeja announced that Riot Games will be letting go of 11% of its staff, resulting in 530 layoffs and the shutdown of Riot Forge. Jadeja stated that Riot has become unsustainable, noting a number of big bets that did not pay off. The letter highlights growing costs and a failure to drive player value as key reasons for the layoffs. Jadeja emphasized the workforce cutbacks as a necessity and not simply a tactic to please shareholders. Employees across the company will start receiving emails and notifying them of termination, with the first layoffs beginning today and the completion of the staff reductions likely to end over the next few weeks. The CEO assured fans that titles from Riot Games would not be impacted, though Legends of Runeterra will see some team resizing. The company also announced that the scope of Legends of Runeterra is being reduced as well as the end of its publishing label, Riot Forge, which was focusing on titles set in the League of Legends universe. Riot will hold an internal meeting called Riot Now in early February to give further update on its portfolio. Jadeja was appointed CEO of Riot back in May 2023, following up on Nicolo Laurent's 6-year tenure. People Can Fly, developer of Outriders, is poised to reduce its staff by more than 30 staffers. As reported by Kotaku, per sources familiar with the matter, the notice was sent to the studio from development director Adam Alker. Within the internal memo seen by the site, Alker attributed the layoffs to budget limitations and shrinking scope. "We understand that this decision impacts each of you, and we want to express our gratitude for your hard work, dedication, and contributions thus far," he said. Those affected included roughly 20 employees developing Project Gemini, an unnamed title being published by Square Enix. Before this announcement, People Can Fly has seen some setbacks. Back in 2022, the studio reported that Outriders didn't make a profit in its 2021 financials report. Then, in September of that year, it and Take-Two Interactive ended a development and publishing deal pertaining to Project Dagger. Polish developer Raycon Games has reportedly dismissed a significant portion of its workforce. Sources told GamesIndustry.biz that around 70 people have been laid off, while former producer Raffle Basage claimed it was around 60 people via a Threads post. Others told Kotaku that an estimated 56% of the company's employees have been affected. The layoffs were announced to staff on January 23, 2024, with multiple former employees since posting on LinkedIn and social media platforms that they are looking for work. Raycon is best known for 2017 cyberpunk shooter Ruiner, which was published by Devolver Digital. Devolver CEO Douglas Morin has stepped down after more than 2 years in the role. Morin initially joined the company in 2020 as chief of staff and was actively involved in Devolver's public listing in November 2021. He is being replaced by Harry Miller, who is the co-founder of Devolver, and was already executive chairman. Miller has previously held the CEO role, and helped form the company in 2009 alongside Rick Stultz, Graham Struthers, Nigel Lowry, and Mike Wilson. Miller's previous roles included leading Ritual Entertainment, Gathering of Developers, Gamecock Media, and Entrance Entertainment. Alongside the CEO change, Kate Marsh has been named non-executive chair. Marsh has been senior independent director since Devolver's IPO. Meanwhile, Graham Struther, COO and co-founder of Devolver, has also joined the company board. On behalf of the board and everyone at Devolver, I would like to thank Douglas for his significant commitment and achievements at Devolver in the last 4 years, Miller said in a statement. Douglas' energy, leadership and determination were critical to our IPO and program to build our infrastructure as a listed company, culminating in the exciting System Era acquisition. I am excited by the opportunity to step back into the CEO role. It's an incredible pleasure and honor to continue to work with Devolver's fantastic and talented team, building out a strong pipeline of fun and creativity, and of course delivering on our long-term growth strategy. The news follows Devolver's latest financial results, which the team says was in line with expectations. Miller said in a trading update, "After a quiet year in 2023 for major title releases, we enter 2024 with a release schedule featuring wonderful titles such as Pepper Grinder, The Plucky Squire, Angerfoot, and Neva, with releases more evenly balanced throughout the year. In addition, we will enjoy a full year of contribution from recently acquired System Era, which takes us into the exciting area of expandable games and has performed in line with expectations since acquisition. As a result of this momentum for our strategy heading into 2024, we expect normalized adjusted EBITDA to return to growth in 2024 and accelerate in 2025, said Miller. Inside Devolver, Kotaku is reporting that Polish studio Artificer laid off roughly half of its team today, or around 25 people. The studio's last game was the turn-based tactics title Shogunners, which launched on Steam in May and holds a very positive review average. Kotaku reports that further cuts are expected, with another 10 to 12 of the remaining developers sticking around for a few months to finish up work on Artificer's next game, at which point they too will be laid off. Artificer owner Devolver Digital did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Devolver took ownership of Artificer in January of 2021 when it acquired the studio's parent company Good Shepherd Entertainment. Good Shepherd originally purchased a majority stake in Artificer in 2019. 2K Games has reportedly laid off an unknown number of developers at Visual Concepts Austin. As reported by game developer, former art manager Brad Bowling posted the news on LinkedIn, sharing that himself and a group of very talented developers had been let go from the company. "I have had a great time over the past couple of years working with some of the finest game devs in the industry," Bowling said. "Over the past 23 years of making game art, I have seen some downturns but nothing like this." Former associate software engineer Sydney F. also posted on LinkedIn that they had been laid off, along with several other amazing colleagues. This marks the second round of layoffs for Visual Concepts Austin. Last September, employees in multiple departments including production, design, and QA were affected, as reported by game developer. 2K Games acquired Visual Concepts Austin in 2021, then called Hookbang. The games team had previously worked on NBA 2K21 and developed the web game Packrat. Sega of America is reportedly laying off 61 employees. The union said they had been in discussion since November to negotiate the situation, but confirmed the 61 layoffs. "Through our union efforts, we've been able to more than double the number of saved jobs, and to offer severance to our temp workers," the union said. This, however, does not take away from the fact that many of our coworkers are being laid off in a decision we believe will have a negative impact on the working conditions of those who remain with the company, and in the quality of our future games. In spite of this, we remain committed to fighting for our coworkers, and for the betterment of our industry. In the face of mass layoffs that continue to happen across gaming companies, we stand united and in solidarity with those affected. The information emerged via a post from What Layoff on social media, and is confirmed by a WARN notice filed in Orange County, California on January 8. Sega of America is set to lay off 61 people across 2 close locations on its Irvine campus, 12 in one office and 49 in another. Worker adjustment and retraining notifications are mandatory for companies employing more than 100 staff, and aim to provide a 60-day notice of planned redundancies and layoffs. Shuji Utsumi was appointed CEO of Sega America and Europe earlier this month. The Allied Employees Guild Improving Sega reacted on social media, confirming this is related to the previously announced plan to phase out temporary workers by February 2024. Sega of America workers voted yes to unionize in July last year, forming the Allied Employees Guild Improving Sega, Aegis. In November, Sega of America was accused of attempting to lay off staff in response to their bargaining efforts. Sega Sammy reported a solid first half to its financial year back in November, with net sales for the 6 months ended September 30, 2023 rising 47.3% year-on-year to 221.2 billion yen, $1.5 billion. Sega acquired Rovio for €706 million in April 2023. Layoffs have occurred in other Sega units in recent months, with Sega canceling Creative Assembly's Hyenas due to structural reforms in late September 2023. And 121 redundancies happening at Company of Heroes developer Relic Entertainment in May 2023. Destiny 2 game director, Joe Blackburn, has announced his decision to depart from Bungie. Blackburn will leave the company following the completion of the internal playtest of Destiny 2 The Final Shape expansion. Final Shape is the game's last expansion, following which Destiny 2 will move from its seasonal model to an episodic model. This is an important shift considering Bungie hasn't announced any plans for a sequel to Destiny 2, which puts the future of the series in question. The studio has teased several other projects being in the works, like the revival of Marathon, a new team-based action game, and an unnamed multiplayer title as well. However, the man behind Destiny 2's most important expansion yet is on his way out following an internal playtest, which has caused quite a stir in the community. In a series of posts on Twitter, Joe Blackburn announced his decision to depart from Bungie after completing the end-to-end playtest for Destiny 2 The Final Shape, which kicks off in February 2024. Blackburn described this playtest as a critical internal milestone that has been a key part of development since Forsaken. Blackburn also notably mentioned having played multiple hours of the delayed Destiny 2 The Final Shape expansion, and claimed that it is one of his proudest achievements so far. Following his departure after the playtest, Tyson Green will assume the role of Destiny 2's game director. Tyson is a Bungie veteran, having worked on Myth 2, Halo PvP, and was also the architect of exotic weapons in Destiny 1. Bungie currently finds itself in the middle of a crisis, which was triggered by the community's disappointment with the 2023 Lightfall expansion. It all went downhill from there as Destiny 2's popularity took a notable hit. The situation worsened when Bungie announced that it was laying off around 100 members of its workforce, which also included some high-profile departures like music composer, Michael Salvatori. Amidst all the chaos, the departure of a key figure like Blackburn could affect Bungie significantly. While Bungie prepares for a major transition, players can jump into Destiny 2's new weekly missions called Wishes, which will award exotics, raid weapons, and more. Furthermore, Bungie will also introduce new content called Into the Light during the time leading up to the Final Shape to help ease the content drought. Beyond its new policy allowing game streaming apps worldwide, Apple has announced new changes it is making to comply with the European Union's Digital Markets Act. Most notably that it will allow alternative app payments and app stores. For its part, Apple continued to show reluctance to comply with the DMA, repeating concerns that the measures will make its platforms more vulnerable to privacy and security threats. Within the DMA's constraints, Apple is committed to protecting the privacy, security, and quality of the iOS user experience in the EU as much as possible, the company said. The changes will go into effect in March. While Apple is also opening up the platform for alternative payment processing in the US, it is taking a 27% commission on all such transactions. In Europe, Apple is allowing developers to continue using their existing business terms or switch to new terms that allow alternative distribution and payment processing. Those terms will see Apple take a commission of up to 17% on transactions for digital goods and services, with the option to use the App Store's payment processing for an additional 3% fee. Additionally, the new terms will see Apple charge a core technology fee of 50 cents for each install per year after the first million. The fee will apply to apps regardless of whether they are distributed through Apple or an alternative marketplace. Epic founder Tim Sweeney was quick to weigh in on the company's new policy on social media, calling it a devious new instance of malicious compliance. They are forcing developers to choose between App Store exclusivity and the store terms, which will be illegal under DMA, or accept a new also illegal anti-competitive scheme rife with new junk fees on downloads and new Apple taxes on payments they don't process, Sweeney said. Nevertheless, Epic has said Fortnite will be returning to Apple devices this year, distributed through the new Epic Games Store for iOS. Epic also had some drama with Google, who in 2018 reportedly offered the Fortnite creator $147 million to bring Fortnite to the Play Store. Epic turned down the offer and chose to release Fortnite on Android devices through its own third-party store, before eventually caving and releasing it on the Play Store as well. However, in 2020, Google followed Apple in removing Fortnite from the Play Store. Looks like Microsoft is also mad at Apple, since they are also creating a mobile gaming store. But it looks like Apple won't be completely bowing down. Based on a recent series of tweets from Larian Studios CEO Sven Vink, it doesn't sound like Baldur's Gate 3 will be coming to any subscription service like PS Plus or Xbox Game Pass anytime soon. The Baldur's Gate 3 dev said, in a first tweet, that content will always be king in the future of games. However, subscriptions becoming the dominant model would make good content harder to produce and find, he claims. It sounds a lot like what happened with Netflix and other streaming services that require subscriptions, as the quality of all content is frequently questioned nowadays. He acknowledged that idealism can lead to disaster, but that it is needed to make a genuine project. The other end of the spectrum, pure subscription models, always end up being cost-benefit analysis exercises intended to maximize profit. Subscriptions becoming the dominant model would harm discoverability. This is already a major challenge given the small, select handful of digital distribution platforms developers have access to, and Vink says those switching to subscriptions would become savage. Ultimately, he said that, in such a world by definition the preference of the subscription service will determine what games get made. Of course, he also acknowledges that subscription services provide opportunities for many developers to make their games, and obviously he doesn't have an issue with that. But he wants to make sure that the standard ecosystem of games, those outside the subscription services, doesn't die because it's valuable. As a result, no Larian Studios game will be available on a subscription service, according to Vink. He had previously indicated that Baldur's Gate 3 wouldn't be coming to Xbox Game Pass. I agree with him, and I had this sentiment for a very long time. Subscription services are not the future, and we have the data to back that up. You may have seen this coming, given that Microsoft has not shared Game Pass subscription numbers in 2 years, since January 2022, but it's because in the wake of explosive pandemic growth, things have slowed quite a bit. Now, there's a relevant comment from someone who would know, the NPD's Matt Piscatella, who makes the point that subscription growth has flattened, and he says that total spending on console and PC subscriptions are just 10% of all spending. Given the subsequent lack of communications, it stands to reason that Microsoft no longer considers the growth rate of Xbox Game Pass something worth boasting about. The latest piece of evidence substantiating that theory comes from London-based analyst and consultancy firm Omdia. Speaking to IGN, Omdia senior analyst James McWhirter revealed that the British company's estimates put Xbox Game Pass memberships in the ballpark of 33.3 million as of year-end 2023. That figure suggests the platform's 2023 growth rate sat at 13%, 2 percentage points down compared to the previous year. Adding the converted Xbox Live Gold as Xbox Core, Game Pass will be sitting at 42 million subs. As such, the idea that the industry is moving toward a Netflix-like ecosystem of subscriptions erasing things like discs or one-off digital downloads is not really going to be a thing, maybe with the exception of Microsoft. I am not shocked that subscription growth is flatlining. At this point it sure feels like anyone with a PlayStation or an Xbox who wants PS Plus or Game Pass is already going to have it, and how much of a ceiling is even left there? Not much, apparently, and we'll have to see what that does to strategies all across the industry if this continues. Data like these that back up my wishes or the direction I want the gaming industry to go is very satisfying. Like another data from the Insomniac leak that PS5 gamers have more time in single-player games more than multiplayer ones, and the strong official media support at PlayStation. Microsoft's Q2 results show initial impact of $68.7 billion ABK deal, with Xbox revenues showing year-on-year growth of 49%. The company brought the Call of Duty publisher into the fold and the $68.7 billion deal was completed in October, adding hundreds of games and millions of users to its gaming business, although this also increased its operating expenses. Due to the Activision Blizzard takeover boosted Microsoft's gaming business, gaming became the third largest sector of Microsoft, surpassing Windows for now. Revenue was $62 billion, up 18% year-on-year, and operating income was $27 billion, up 33%. Activision Blizzard helped grow Microsoft's gaming revenue for its second quarter by 49% when compared to the same period in the previous year. Xbox content and services revenue was up 61% year-on-year. That's significantly more than the growth shown by the next biggest segment of its more personal computing division, which includes Xbox, with Windows OEM revenue only growing by 11%. The addition of ABK helped push more personal computing revenues up 19% to $16.9 billion, and total company revenues up 18% to $62 billion. During Microsoft's earnings call, Chief Financial Officer Amy Hood said that gaming revenues were in line with expectations as stronger-than-expected performance from Activision was offset by the weaker-than-expected console market. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella stating during an earnings call that Xbox reached an all-time record number of monthly active users across Xbox, PC and mobile at over 200 million. Again, this is primarily thanks to Activision Blizzard and, in the case of mobile, the inclusion of Candy Crush creator King. Nadella also revealed that the number of hours streamed by users of Xbox Cloud Gaming rose by 44%. Xbox hardware revenue was up 3%, suggesting another decent holiday sales period for the console, although Hood expects this to decline year-on-year in the next quarter, 3 months ending March 31, 2024. The Activision Blizzard acquisition has also had an impact on Microsoft's total operating expenses, which rose by 38% year-on-year. A breakdown of the net impact from the deal suggested ABK adds operating expenses of $1.59 billion, with an operating loss of $440,000. The net impact of ABK on Microsoft's overall revenue was reported as $2.08 billion, although it's noted this included moving Activision's revenues from third-party reporting to first-party. Nintendo posted an increase in sales and net profit for the 9 months ending December 31, in what will likely be the final Christmas for Switch before its successor arrives this year. While Nintendo saw a decrease in hardware and software sales, it provided a slight increase in its forecast for the full year. Net sales were 1.4 trillion yen, $9.4 billion, up 7.7% year-on-year, and net profit were 408 billion yen, $2.7 billion, up 17.9% year-on-year. Hardware was 13.7 million Switch units sold, down 7.8% year-on-year, and software was 164 million units sold, down 4.7% year-on-year. Sales on Nintendo's own platforms were up 4.7% to 1.3 trillion yen, $8.7 billion, including hardware, software, and accessories, while mobile and IP-related sales increased 93.4% to 75.2 million yen, $505 billion. This was attributed to the revenue generated by the Super Mario Bros. Movie released in April 2023. In terms of hardware, the Switch shipped 13.7 million units during the 9 months ended in December 2023, a decrease of 7.8% compared to the 14.9 million sold during the same period in the previous year. The OLED model shipped 8.17 million units, an increase of 6.2% compared to the previous figure of 7.69 million units sold in the 9 months ended in December 2022. The standard model shipped 3.4 million units, a year-on-year decline of 34.9%. But it was the Switch Lite that showed the most growth during this period at 2.18 million units, marking an increase of 9.1% compared to the 2 million units sold in the same period the previous year. Nintendo cited stable sales of the Switch models given the fact the platform is in its 7th year, and the results were generally in line with its expectations. Nintendo Switch reached 139 million units shipped overall, becoming the third largest gaming system to have been sold to date, and the best-selling gaming system in Japan of all time. It is behind the PS2 by 20 million units, and note that 139 million is shipped, not sold through. And I don't think the Switch will reach 150 million sold. While unit sales of hardware and software both decreased year-over-year, net sales increased by 4.7% to 1.35 trillion yen, $9.1 billion. Despite an overall decrease in software unit sales, new titles released in 2023 saw strong starts with 24 titles selling over a million, including games from other publishers. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom sold just shy of 20.3 million units following its launch in May 2023, while Pikmin 4 sold 3.3 million units after its release in July. Super Mario Bros. Wonder sold almost 12 million units after its debut in October. By the end of the third quarter the game reached a global sell-through of 10.7 million units, making it the fastest-selling Super Mario title to date. Nintendo noted the success of the Super Mario Bros. Movie had a positive impact on sales of Mario-related titles, with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe selling a further 6.79 million copies, with cumulative sales of 60.6 million units. Digital sales increased by 11.7% year-on-year to 346 billion yen, $2.3 billion, with Nintendo highlighting an increase in sales for Nintendo Switch Online and DLC for games such as Pokémon Scarlet and Pokémon Violet. Nintendo also recorded its highest-ever number of annual players during the 9 months ended December 31, 2023, with an estimated 122 million users compared to 114 million during the same period last year. Elsewhere, regional stats showcased that 70% of sales were made overseas with 43.9% of sales made in the Americas, 25% in Europe, and 21.3% in Japan. Looking ahead, Nintendo increased its expectations for the full year in its hardware and software sales numbers. The platform holder previously expected to sell 15 million hardware units, and is now expecting 15.5 million. As for software, it previously anticipated to shift 185 million units, which has been revised to 190 million. Capcom has released its results through the first 9 months of its fiscal year, which continues to be a successful one for the publisher. Net sales accounts for 106 billion yen, $723 million, up 33% year-on-year, and operating income was 47.7 billion yen, $325 million, up 43%. The holiday quarter wasn't much for new releases on the Capcom front, but its recently launched titles from earlier in the year helped ensure the publisher posted significant growth through the first 9 months of its fiscal year. June release Street Fighter VI sold 2.98 million units through the end of 2023, and passed the 3 million mark early in 2024, while last March's Resident Evil 4 hit a lifetime sales total of 6.48 million. The remake of Resident Evil 4 broke the franchise record for the fastest-selling game, receiving a boost from a new PSVR 2 mode launched last month. The total puts Resident Evil 4 significantly ahead of the previous leader in the Resident Evil 2 remake, which sold 5.8 million units during a similar timeframe. Resident Evil 4's 6.48 million copies also comes in at just over 1 million higher than its last reported sales in September. Meanwhile, Capcom said the announcement of Monster Hunter Wilds drove solid sales for previous entries in the franchise, and Monster Hunter Now on mobile has reached 10 million downloads life to date. Overall, Capcom's digital contents division sold 32.6 million units through the first 9 months of its fiscal year, up 12% year-over-year. Despite the success of Street Fighter VI, Capcom's older titles drove most of that, with catalog sales up 21% year-over-year to 26.7 million units. The holiday quarter went more or less according to expectations for Capcom, as the company maintained its previously announced full-year forecast. Konami has raised its forecasts for the financial year following a strong 9-month period in which revenues rose 11% and profits were up 53%. For the 9 months ending December 31, 2023, the Japanese publisher reported business profit up 62.8 billion yen, $427 million, up 53% year-on-year, and operating profit of $405.2 million, up 59%. The total revenue was 253.1 billion yen, $1.72 billion, up 11.6% year-on-year. Konami's digital entertainment segment, which handles its video games business, stands as the biggest contributor to the publisher's success, accounting for almost 70% of the company's total revenue. In the most recent quarter, this division was boosted by the launches of Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1, which features the first 3 Solid titles plus the 2 original Metal Gear games, and the Japan-only launch of Momotaro Dentetsu World Shikua Kibud Mawataru. The latter is a popular digital board game series, with this new Switch title selling more than 1 million copies between its November 16 launch and the end of the year. In fact, Famitsu data shows it was the 7th biggest selling retail game in Japan for the whole year. Konami also noted strong performances from eFootball 2024, the esports-focused successor to the Pro Evolution Soccer series, and Professional Baseball Spirits. Other divisions of Konami have also fared well so far this financial year, with strong growth from its amusement segment. This business more than doubled its profits year-on-year to 2.2 billion yen, $15 million, and saw revenues rise 55% to 16.3 billion yen, $110.8 million. As a result, Konami is raising its forecasts for the current financial year with Metal Gear Solid 3 and Silent Hill 2 remakes hitting the window. Electronic Arts released its earnings report for Q3 FY24, the 3 months ended December 31, 2023, with the firm seeing modest top-line growth but a more considerable jump from the bottom line that was higher than the company's outlook range. Revenue was $1.95 billion, up 3% year-over-year, and net income was $290 million, up 42% year-over-year. EA saw at least some growth from all its key performance indicators during the holiday quarter, but the publisher was likely most pleased by EA Sports FC. EA Sports FC outperformed expectations again this quarter, delivering 7% year-over-year net bookings growth, as momentum continued through the FC brand transition, said EA CFO Stuart Canfield. EA Sports FC 24 launched in September and was the first installment under the new banner since EA parted ways with FIFA. In addition to the name change, the franchise was also being compared against a 2022 that was boosted from interest in the FIFA World Cup. We will continue to build upon the strength within our portfolio, while prioritizing investments in our largest opportunities for multi-year growth, Canfield said. The only other product for which financial performance was addressed was the Madden franchise, which saw net bookings grow 5% year-over-year in the third quarter. EA's live services collectively set a new record for the company with Q3 revenues of $1.71 billion, up 3% year-over-year. Live services now make up 73% of EA's revenues. On the other hand, full game sales were down 5% year-over-year to $654 million, and down 27% from the third quarter of 2 years ago. EA's major releases for this Q3 were NHL 24, UFC 5, and WRC 23, compared to last year's NHL 23 and Need for Speed Unbound, and the 2 years ago lineup of NHL 22 and Battlefield 2042. Looking ahead, EA nudged up its full-year forecast slightly, with net revenues now expected between $7.41 billion and $7.71 billion. Net income is expected between $1.15 billion and $1.27 billion. Focus Entertainment released its third-quarter earnings report, posting a 43% decrease. This was partly attributed to no major releases during the 3 months ending December 31. The games firm also announced that on April 1, it will be rebranding to PulluP Entertainment. Total revenue was €43.3 million, down 43% year-on-year. The quarter saw revenue activity driven by its titles, Insurgency Sandstorm, A Plague Tale Requiem, SnowRunner, and Atomic Heart. Regarding its total revenue decline of 43% for Q3, the firm noted that it released A Plague Tale Requiem and Evil West during the period last year. Additionally, Focus Entertainment said that revenue for the period includes activity from its newly established audiovisual production Play from Script team. The name change will come as part of a broader restructuring consisting of 3 internal branches. Focus Entertainment Publishing will continue the studio's third-party publishing work. The Arcade Crew will work with smaller developers to help publish indie-scale projects. And its 7 internal development studios, including the Surge developer Deck 13, Strumman, 12 Tenths, Leaker Studio, Blackmill, Dovetail, and Carpool Studio will make up its aptly named Studios branch. While ultimately unknown, it's possible that Focus' 9% revenue drop for 2023 and its 43% third-quarter plummet have led the company down this new path. Fans of the publisher's games don't seem quite receptive to the new PulluP name, though it may take some time for the new moniker to settle in. Compared to some of the other major publishers like Ubisoft and EA, Focus was never as popular or recognizable. Perhaps that may begin to change as the restructured PulluP Entertainment. The publisher currently has 2 major titles expected to launch this year, with Dontnod's Banishers Ghosts of New Eden on February 13th and Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 on September 9th. Asobo has already previously confirmed it's working with Focus once again for what is presumed to be a third Plague Tale game. Hopefully, this remains unchanged, and considering its Focus' most successful property, it's likely still at play. Focus is set to officially change its name to PulluP Entertainment on April 1st, but fans should expect the reveal of its new logo at some point sooner. Final Fantasy maker Square Enix released its financial earnings for the 9 months that ended on December 31, 2023. Net sales was 257.6 billion yen, $1.7 billion, up 1% year-on-year, and profit was 26.8 billion yen, $180 million, down 42% year-on-year. The HD game subsection generated 66.8 billion yen, $449 million, in net sales, an increase of 15% compared to last year. The division saw various games released during the 9-month period. Square Enix's HD title launches include Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, Final Fantasy XVI, Infinity Strash Dragon Quest The Adventure of Dai and Star Ocean The Second Story R. During the period, MMOs made 34.8 billion yen, $234 million, in revenue, representing a decrease of 14% year-over-year. Its 2 operating titles, Final Fantasy XIV and Dragon Quest X, plan to have new expansion packs for 2024. Additionally, the publisher's earnings revealed that it sold 18.51 million copies of downloaded and packaged games during the 9 months. Downloaded games comprised 14.32 million units, whereas disc-based titles sold 4.19 million units. As reported by Jamastu per GameBiz, the publisher will inherit the studio's assets and liabilities. Tokyo RPG Factory was established in 2014, focusing on new console RPG projects. It released titles such as I Am Setsuna in 2016 and Lost Sphere in 2017. Meanwhile, Tokyo RPG's last game was Anunnaki, which was launched in 2019. Square Enix notes that it launched its newest title, Foam Stars, is set to launch on February 6th. Meanwhile, the next installment of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, is set to release on February 29th. Square Enix has disbanded Tokyo RPG Factory and absorbed the subsidiary into its larger firm. While Square Enix develops a number of projects in-house, it has also outsourced quite a bit, leading to a staggeringly large portfolio of games. A company financial Q&A earlier this month revealed that Square Enix would be focusing on both diversifying its portfolio while releasing fewer titles, pivoting from a long-time strategy of launching numerous mid-budget games in quick succession. Square Enix seems to be doubling down on this initiative, emphasizing large-scale projects like the ambitious Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, per comments made during a recent financial briefing. As reported by Bloomberg, Square Enix will be restructuring this spring, reducing its reliance on outsourcing and buttressing the development of internally developed games. In service of this end, the company will also be implementing new methods of quality assurance, evaluating titles at earlier points in their development. Square Enix president Takashi Kiryu states that an official announcement of these changes is forthcoming. The decision to slash external development follows a less than ideal year for Square Enix. Despite the success of the tradition-defining Final Fantasy XVI, Square Enix suffered a decrease in sales during 2023, and the company has struggled to maintain profitability over the past few years. In light of this, it makes sense that Square Enix would want to decrease its overall gaming output, not only to reduce general development costs, but also to preserve the quality of its brand and not dilute its best-selling franchises. Time will tell how much these changes will impact Square Enix's gaming catalog, but the shift could benefit consumers. While some fans may be disappointed by the prospect of fewer games, it seems like Square Enix could be taking a quality over quantity approach, shipping more games like the hotly anticipated Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, rather than attempting to pump out as much content as possible. Ideally, a greater focus on internal development will translate to better Square Enix games, even if there are fewer overall. Games publisher Paradox Interactive has released its earnings for the year, reporting an increase of 34% in revenue. Revenue was 995.6 million Swedish kronor, $95 million, up 72% year-on-year, and profit was 131 million Swedish kronor, $12.5 million, down 46% year-on-year. The company noted that it amassed more than 6 million monthly active users across its titles throughout the fiscal year. It currently has 10 titles in operation across its studio portfolio. 2023 has been a year during which we've reached many milestones. We set a new revenue record. In the full year and in the quarter, we have stably more than 6 million players, and we end the year with a very strong financial position, said CEO Frederick Wester. At the same time, we're unable to relax. EBIT, earnings before income tax, is at a level we are not happy with after a large write-down, and the quarter's game releases have not held the quality we want. There is certainly potential to reach even higher. Wester also said the company's live games and expansions performed well. Regarding the publisher's game releases, Paradox's revenue growth for its fourth quarter was attributed to titles such as City Skyline 2, Crusader Kings 3, Hearts of Iron 4, The Lamplighters League, and Stellaris. However, due to poor sales performance, the quarter saw Paradox write down Lamplighters League. Cities Skylines 2 only sold 1 million copies so far. The decision cost the game's firm a $24 million, 250 million Swedish kronor, hit, and layoffs at the developer. The game's publisher then announced that it would be parting ways with game developer Harebrained Schemes. Roblox today reported its financial results for the fourth quarter and fiscal year ended December 31, 2023, showing the user-generated content platform continues to grow its revenues as well as its losses. Revenue was $2.8 billion, up 26% year-on-year. Roblox's financial results show the story around the company hasn't changed much. It continues to grow, with the company breaking $1 billion in bookings for a quarter for the very first time in Q4, but it also continues to post significant losses. We finished 2023 with another strong quarter of growth as we continue to drive innovation and new experiences across the Roblox platform, Roblox founder and CEO David Baszucki said. We enter 2024 with even more conviction of being able to achieve our long-term goal of attracting over 1 billion daily active users with optimism and civility. We continue to benefit from the strong network effects in content, social connection, and communication, as well as our investments in immersive experiences, advertising, and AI, said the company. Roblox still has a ways to go to hit 1 billion daily active users. In the fourth quarter, daily active users grew 22% year-over-year to a new all-time high but still totaled just 71.5 million. The company said that growth was driven largely by older users and international markets. The number of people paying Roblox also grew in Q4, with 15.9 million monthly unique payers spending an average of $23.65 on the platform each month, a new record average bookings per monthly unique payer stat for Roblox. Roblox also said its expansion onto Meta Quest and PlayStation during the quarter helped it attract new users, and noted that its spending on personnel and certain infrastructure, trust and safety had been reined in somewhat, with the former growing slower than bookings, and the latter shrinking in absolute numbers. In general, we expect these trends to continue, the company said. We believe the amount of high-quality content on Roblox will continue to grow, more users will become payers and payers will generally spend more as time goes on, and we will benefit from the growth of both Meta Quest and Sony PlayStation. In addition, we expect to scale our brand-related microtransaction and advertising business over time as more companies invest in building presence on Roblox. Looking ahead, the company projected revenue for 2024 to be up 18% to 21% to between $3.30 and $3.4 billion. Meanwhile, it expects net losses to deepen at the same rate, ending 2024 with net losses between $1.37 billion and $1.4 billion. Supermassive Games co-founders and brothers Pete and Joe Samuels have announced they are officially stepping down from the studio they started more than 15 years ago. Supermassive has become known amongst fans for its gripping interactive games, first gaining major notoriety with 2015's Until Dawn. The developer would go on to create the Dark Pictures anthology franchise spanning several episodic releases, as well as 2022's The Quarry. Before the founding of Supermassive Games, Pete Samuels had spent time working with both EA and Sony subsidiary Psygnosis. Following Supermassive's forming, the studio originally worked as a second-party developer for Sony, creating on DLC for the first two Little Big Planet games and the PS3 remaster of Killzone. Supermassive would also later work with Bandai Namco on the Little Nightmares franchise, developing the enhanced edition of Little Nightmares 2 and assuming full development of Little Nightmares 3. Now, the studio's two co-founders are saying goodbye after more than a decade with Supermassive Games. In an official announcement made to Supermassive Games' LinkedIn page, the company reveals that founders Pete and Joe Samuels will be leaving the company. The statement from Pete Samuels cites health grounds as the leading reason behind his decision to part with the company, expressing his admiration for the team at Supermassive. Samuels also reveals that Avalanche Studios chairman Robert Henrison will take over as the new CEO of Supermassive Games, following the Samuels brothers' departure. The news regarding Supermassive Games co-founders comes on the heels of a major announcement for one of the developer's biggest franchises. Earlier this month, Sony officially revealed a film adaptation of Until Dawn is in development earlier this month, with Shazam! Director David F. Sandberg and former G4 host Blair Butler writing the script. Many fans have also suggested that the Until Dawn movie could retain the game's original cast, featuring recognizable actors like Hayden Panettiere and Rami Malek. A release window for the film was not confirmed. Pete and Joe Samuels will leave Supermassive Games as the studio has plenty of major releases on the way. Little Nightmares 3 is expected to launch at an unknown date during 2024, starring a pair of new protagonists venturing through the nowhere. Supermassive is also scheduled to release the casting of Frank Stone during 2024, a single-player narrative-driven spin-off of Dead by Daylight in collaboration with Behavior Interactive. The Samuels brothers leave behind a lasting legacy from their time with Supermassive as the developer looks poised to reach even greater heights going forward. Former members of Volition, a studio known for franchises like Saints Row and Red Faction, have banded together to start a new development company called Shapeshifter Games. Embracer Group, formerly known as THQ Nordic and the Nordic Games licensing prior to that, has continued to scoop up assets over the past 10 years or so, including assets from THQ, Crystal Dynamics, and tons of different IPs. Unfortunately, recent times have not been quite as kind, as a reported failed deal between Embracer and Savvy Gaming Group forced the company to announce a large-scale restructuring plan involving studio closures and staff reductions. As staff were laid off and projects cancelled, one of the studios to shut down was Volition, which was one of the original THQ assets Deep Silver acquired before being purchased by Embracer in 2018. The studio had become well known for the Saints Row series, though the studio's final two launches of Agents of Mayhem and the franchise reboot Saints Row found a dedicated smaller audience but largely failed to resonate with consumers. As such, Embracer announced that Volition would be shut down on August 31, 2023, prompting the studio to post one final heartfelt message to fans. However, Hour of the Ashes of Volition has seen the rise of a new studio with a number of veterans from the Champaign, Illinois company. The announcement comes from a post on LinkedIn by Matt Madigan, the studio head at Shapeshifter Games. Madigan reveals that Shapeshifter Games is a co-development partner for AAA games, meaning they're going to assist other developers/publishers with their projects. Located in Champaign, the studio also appears to have worked as the profile of lighting artist A.J. Nelson, who arrived from Immortals of Avium developer Ascendant Studios, seemingly confirmed that Shapeshifter is currently co-developing a project with Xbox Game Studios. Unfortunately, no additional details were provided. In addition to Madigan, who previously served in various financial roles with Volition, THQ, and Koch Media, Shapeshifter has managed to bring in a number of veterans from the Saints Row studio. This includes people like Rob Loftus and Brian Traficante, who are serving as dual studio heads at Shapeshifter. Others include longtime Volition level designers like Jeff Touchstone and Chad Dodson, software engineer David N. Sager, quest designer Alex Klein, along with designers Darren Dienst and Brian Dillow. While the Volition closure ultimately had a happy ending for many, Embracer looks to be gearing up for another round of layoffs. Speaking of Embracer Group has reportedly cancelled a new Deus Ex game amid layoffs at its studio Eidos Montreal. The last Deus Ex was released in 2016, and it left the story open for a sequel, which Eidos Montreal studio has been developing until now. Formerly known as THQ Nordic, the Embracer Group is a major publisher in the game industry. However, the company has been facing a huge crisis after a $2 billion deal was lost by Embracer Group. Before the deal fell off, the company bought several new studios. However, the recent crisis made the publisher shut some of them down and cancel projects to cut costs. Now, a yet unannounced Deus Ex sequel has been cancelled, according to Bloomberg. The project spent 2 years in pre-production and was about to enter full production this year. The game would have been a sequel to Deus Ex Mankind Divided, but it's unclear whether it would have directly continued its story, as some previous rumors about Deus Ex pointed to a co-op game. Soon after the news of the cancellation broke out, Eidos Montreal officially confirmed that 97 of its employees were laid off. Now, it seems that the rest of the studio will start working on a new, original franchise which has also not been announced yet. The unfortunate layoffs and cancellations made by Embracer Group are part of a larger trend that is hitting the industry very hard in January. Especially Embracer Group and Microsoft is destroying the industry through consolidation. Spec Ops: The Line has been quietly delisted from Steam, to the confusion of both fans and one of the game's original developers. While the war shooter never saw the same level of success as its competitors like Call of Duty and Battlefield, Jaeger Development brought a unique twist to the genre with the 2012 shooter. Spec Ops: The Line is notorious for its subversion of the war shooter genre, calling into question the player's in-game actions and the morality of killing. Now, the Steam version of the game has mysteriously vanished. While reviews of Spec Ops: The Line were largely positive, praising its narrative and themes, the game did not prove to be a success for Jaeger Entertainment. The game was a commercial failure following its launch, only later garnering a cult following among fans for its unique narrative for a war shooter. According to Spec Ops: The Line's lead writer, Walt Williams, publisher 2K had never discussed the potential of a sequel to the shooter, with members of the game's team also wanting to move on. Now, many fans may have just lost the chance to try it out. Spec Ops: The Line's page is no longer accessible through the search function on Steam, with the game's store page listing it as no longer available on the Steam store. The removal even came as a surprise to director Corey Davis, stating that he feels Spec Ops: The Line's themes are more relevant than ever. Many fans speculated that expiring music licenses may have led to the stealthy removal. A removal of Spec Ops: The Line for a lapsed license would not be the first time licensing agreements have led to a game's shutdown. Last year saw Gun Interactive's asymmetrical horror adaptation of Friday the 13th delisted after the license expired. Expiring licenses are one of the most common reasons for many popular adaptations being pulled from online storefronts, with games like the X-Men arcade game, XMEM Origins Wolverine and Outrun 2 seeing similar fates. While fans on Steam may no longer be able to try out Spec Ops: The Line, the game's development team continues to make news. Writer Walt Williams has been a major part of multiple recent releases from Insomniac Games, acting as co-writer on Marvel's Spider-Man 2 and the upcoming Marvel's Wolverine. Director Corey Davis would go on to join indie studio Tangent Games, helping to create the 2016 VR horror game Here They Lie as a launch title for PlayStation VR. The delisting of Spec Ops: The Line sees the removal of one of gaming's most controversial and unique stories. Nexon's Warhaven revealed that it's shutting down later this year. The unfortunate Warhaven news comes just 4 months after it began its early access phase in September. The medieval fantasy PvP game caught the attention of some fans early on, who believed that Warhaven could turn out to be one of the best games of its kind in 2023. Its hack-and-slash-combat brought a unique approach to the genre and differed in key ways from other melee-focused medieval games like Chivalry or For Honor. Its combat mechanics were simpler and more intuitive than its competitors, creating a beginner-friendly experience while also offering a high skill ceiling through nuanced techniques. However, following its release, Warhaven never managed to take off. Recently, Nexon made what is probably one of its final announcements regarding the game. Nexon announced that Warhaven is shutting down on April 5 and has suspended sales of its Battle Pass. Although many medieval Melee fans have already moved on from the game. This probably comes as disappointing news, as some may have hoped that Warhaven would eventually be improved to an enjoyable state. Nexon Korea, the Nexon subsidiary that developed Warhaven, will instead likely focus on its other projects like Dynasty Warriors M, a recently released mobile game that features city building and combat, and MapleStory N, an MMORPG set in the popular MapleStory universe that's still in development. Previously, Nexon seemed to have pretty robust plans for the game's future when it released Warhaven's Pre-Season 1 content in October. This content drop included the Souls Dance Festival event, new skins, and a competition mode. One aspect that the game focused on was the lore of Warhaven's characters. Each playable character was given an extensive backstory that explained why they had chosen to fight. Presumably, this was done to help players understand and relate to their chosen hero, but seemingly this was another aspect of Warhaven that didn't end up sticking. Ex-Warhaven fans looking for a new game might want to check out a list of the best medieval Melee games on the market. Similar titles include games like Chivalry 2, Mordha, and more. Chinese technology giant Huawei has filed a patent for a handheld video game controller that can be modified into various shapes depending on the player's desired configuration. Huawei has previously released unique game consoles for Chinese audiences, along with a series of popular mobile phones, and the tech powerhouse is now entering the fray of customizable gaming controllers. Huawei Technologies is a Chinese multinational corporation that acts as designer, developer, and manufacturer of a vast array of technological equipment including telecommunications devices, consumer electronics, and even solar products. The company is frequently compared to Sony, as both entities share a similar catalog of tech developments. As Sony is also working on new controller patents, Huawei is keeping pace with its own video game hardware offerings. A new patent reveals that Huawei is developing a new handheld video game controller made of interconnecting pieces that can be separated and reconnected, allowing players to completely modify the controller. The pieces connect to a central, base component, which the separate pieces can be reattached to in a number of ways. Examples given in the patent include a number of weapon configurations, a steering wheel shape, and a wider grip layout. Huawei notes that the intent of this controller design would be to give each individual player the freedom to modify the device to fit their own physical needs, gameplay style, and creative designs. With a variety of customizable video game controllers already on the market, Huawei is working to provide its own offering, though there is no guarantee that this controller will ever be manufactured and sold to consumers. Huawei handheld video game controller patent show a number of potential modifications that can be made to suit players' needs. A steering wheel setup and two gun configurations can be seen, highlighting the possible uses of a modifiable controller. The individual pieces, such as items 102 and 301 in figures 28-32, can be seen in altered positions. These separable components offer a unique degree of customization, as other devices on the market often have a fixed controller design with buttons and joysticks being the only interchangeable pieces. However, companies frequently file patents that are never brought to fruition, so there is no guarantee that this controller will ever be made available. It does at least give consumers a useful insight into the developments happening at Huawei and reveals some of the growing innovations at technology companies. Hardware evolutions continue to provide unique gameplay offerings which in turn can drive healthy competition between tech giants. Having a wide variety of controllers to choose from allows players to customize their gaming experience and helps to make video games more accessible. As Huawei continues to contribute to the growing array of video game hardware options, interested fans may want to stay tuned to learn more about new offerings in technology and gaming. African mobile games publisher Carry 1ST announced it has received an investment from Sony Innovation Fund. It's the first to receive funding from Sony's initiative that intends to expand entertainment businesses within Africa. Carry 1ST was founded in 2018 by Tinotenda Mundenjepfupfu, Lucy Hoffman, and Cordell Robin Coker. The relationship will help Carry 1ST to drive the future of gaming in Africa. At Carry 1ST, we believe that the African console market is a massively underestimated opportunity, said CEO Robin Coker. Our distinct regional capabilities, paired with Sony's expertise in gaming and entertainment, creates a powerful combination. Together, we hope to bring the best games in the world to players across Africa. Last year, Carrie Wannisty announced that it raised $27 million in funding. It is similar to the China Hero and the India Hero projects, and the Korean partnerships and fundings PlayStation is doing to cultivate talent to get great games from around the world. And that's all for the video, ladies and gentlemen. Like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics, and donations are always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then, from SMPV, it's goodbye.